In Nigeria, the Niger State Governor, Mohammed Bago, has promised to review the security situation in schools across the state in the wake of the abduction of children from St. Mary's Catholic School, Pupil. Governor Bago was speaking to journalists at Government House, Minna, after he received the remaining 130 school children and members of the staff of the school who had regained their freedom. While expressing relief that the remaining hostages had regained their freedom, the governor expressed displeasure with some parents for sending very young children to boarding school.
Possible without everybody's hands on deck, so this is good. But seeing the size of those children is really, really touching. You know, a child of 1 year, 2 years old and in captivity, you know, it's very, very touching. However, we are grateful to God because at least we've gotten these children. And we are going to hand them over to their parents by tomorrow. We'll start the process. And they are being taken care of. They have been going through a lot of medical checks. The UNICEF is collaborating with the state government and the federal government. They are all doing the necessary things. So in a very nutshell, we are grateful. We thank God at least they will do Christmas with their parents. I don't think it's very fair, you know, to the system, to the government, for you to ask whether money was used or not. Most important thing, we have gotten these people back unhurt, you know. The other one is for us, not for you. So I think the most important is that we have recovered missing children, and how we did it, we know it. What we have seen in this situation, some parents don't want to take responsibility, because it's very irresponsible of somebody to take his child at 2 years or 3 years into a boarding facility. You know, these are not things we should discuss today. They are things that we're going to review, and also about the school, its operation and everything, and not just that school. A host of schools who are in this practice will have to be looked into.
Well, for more on this development, I have joining me from Minna, the Niger state capital, Arise correspondent Charles Eruka. Charles, glad to have you join me.
Good evening.
Yes, well, 130 have been released, and the talk is that that's the lot. But then again, the bishop of the bishop that owns the school, that their church owns the school, says it's 165 that's remaining, another 130. What are you hearing about that?
Okay, so this game of numbers has been going on for a while throughout this whole saga. So let me just walk us through it, and then maybe we can unpack the mathematics here. So initially it was 303 pupils or students, so to say, along with 12 members of staff. Well, we were told teachers, but then we got to find out that it's not teachers alone. Some were matrons, some were ground staff, so it was a mix of teachers and other members of staff. So generally, 12 members of staff and 303 students who were abducted. Now, that was supposed to be a total of 315. Somewhere along the line, 50 of the abducted children escaped. So what's the balance? And then 100 were released, and then we have 130 released now. So that's 230 released. Add that to another 50 that escaped. So that gives you 280. So basically, that is what we have. Now, what about the ones unaccounted for? The idea is that it was in the process of documentation that the mistake was made. So the figures were initially overquoted. So it wasn't up to the over 300 that were initially documented, because what happened was that when the documentation was going on, some of the parents did not immediately respond. So it was assumed that the ones who were not captured in the documentation had actually been abducted. That has been sorted out now. So the number of abductees is significantly lower than the figures initially quoted. But as time goes on, the picture will emerge clearly, clearly, because what really happened what became the problem that led to the mix-up in the numbers. So it's a game of numbers, Ndi. However, what we know for sure is that all the captives have been set free. No one is in captivity now. Going by the information we have from the Office of the National Security Advisor and from the Niger State Governor. So, well, for them it's a big relief that all the captives have been released unharmed.
Just like you said, going by the information of the government, the state, and the federal government. Have you had any session with any of the parents? I'm sure they're feeling elated and excited, as they should be, the parents on the one hand, but any talk at all about their captors, prosecution. Any discussions on that at all? Have you had anything about that?
The question was actually put to the governor about how the children were rescued and if there were arrests made. But then that now became a matter of national security, and he was not going to answer that question the way we put it. What he said was that the captives have returned, and that is all we need to know. Whatever must have happened behind the scenes, that was not for public consumption. That as much he said, and I'm sure you listened to that. As for the parents, you know, their community, Papiri, is about 6 hours at least away from Minna, the state capital. So I'm not sure any of the parents were here today during the handover of the children to the governor. The process is that the children have been handed over to the governor. The governor will be handing them over to the proprietor of the school, who is the Bishop of Kontagora, Bishop Bulus Yohana. That will be happening probably tomorrow. And afterwards, the bishop will now hand over the children to their parents over there in Papiri community. So, as it is, none of the parents, as far as we know, was here today for this event. So, if we need to talk to the parents, that means that we may have to make that trip to Papiri community in the shortest possible time.
From the parents, let's talk about the children themselves. I mean, you got to see them, meet them. How did they look? How did they sound psychologically, health-wise? Were they in good condition? Were they in high spirits?
Well, they were looking very sober. Remember, we had 2 batches. So it's very curious to see that the first batch of abductees that were released were kids between the ages of 10, 14, 15, thereabouts. Those were teenagers and a few preteens. This time around, the age range is significantly lower. Most of these children are below the age of 10. And you heard the governor say that he was actually dismayed that some parents are not taking responsibility and they had to send children that young to boarding schools. That's why he promised that the security situation in schools like that will be reviewed, meaning that there will be an age limit to the children that will be sent to boarding school. Now, those very young children were actually looking very sober. Yes, they had been properly cleaned up. They had actually gone through medical evaluation. So definitely they were not brought straight from captivity to be presented to the governor. They passed through the process. So the look, of course, was that they were looking sober and they were also looking relieved. And if you also notice, there were some adults among them, and those were the members of staff that had been kidnapped alongside the students.
Well, thank you so much, Eruka. I mean, the question of one doesn't know how young they are, but the question of sending young ones to, I mean, some people are arguing, what do you mean? It depends on how young they are. Why shouldn't they go to boarding school? But I guess that will be a discussion for another day, or when we have a time to speak with the governor himself. Thank you so much, Charles Eruka. Stay safe there in Minna, Niger State. Thank you.